Think about how weird this behavior actually is. Humans spend enormous amounts of time inside imaginary social situations. We replay old arguments. We rehearse future explanations. We prepare responses to questions nobody has asked. Sometimes we even imagine conversations with people we'll probably never meet again. And somehow, this feels normal. But imagine observing this behavior from the outside. A species spending hours talking to invisible people. Running simulations of events that may never happen. It's almost absurd. Which raises another question. Why would evolution allow something like this? The human brain is expensive. It consumes a huge amount of energy. Evolution usually doesn't keep costly behaviors around unless they serve a purpose. So what purpose could imaginary conversations possibly serve? Most people assume the answer is simple. Fear. We're afraid of embarrassment. Afraid of rejection. Afraid of saying the wrong thing. And sometimes that's true. But there's a detail most people overlook. If conversation rehearsal were simply a symptom of anxiety, then only anxious people would do it. Yet that's not what we see. Actors rehearse conversations. Leaders rehearse conversations. Politicians rehearse conversations. Negotiators rehearse conversations. Even highly confident people mentally practice future interactions. That suggests something important. The behavior isn't limited to people who struggle socially. It's built into being human. And once you realize that, the mystery becomes much bigger. Because now we're not asking what's wrong with certain people. We're asking why human beings evolved this ability in the first place. To understand that, we have to leave the modern world behind. Imagine living tens of thousands of years ago. No phones. No internet. No cities. Only small tribes. Groups of maybe 100 people. In those environments, social relationships weren't just important. They were survival. A damaged reputation could cost opportunities. A conflict could cost alliances. Being excluded from the group could be catastrophic. Your ancestors weren't simply surviving predators. They were surviving other humans. And that's where things get interesting. Because evolution eventually gave humans something unusual. The ability to mentally simulate social situations before they happened. Think of it as a practice mode for reality. Athletes visualize performances. Musicians mentally rehearse routines. Humans do something similar with social interactions. Your brain creates possible futures. Then tests them. What should I say? How might they respond? What happens if this goes badly? What happens if it goes well? In a sense, imaginary conversations are social simulations. Your mind is running practice rounds before the real event begins. Suddenly the behavior doesn't seem irrational anymore. It seems useful. Maybe even brilliant. But if that's true, another question appears. Why does it sometimes feel exhausting? Why do these conversations occasionally spiral into endless loops? Why does a useful ability sometimes become a burden? The answer may have less to do with your brain. And more to do with the world around it. Because the brain running inside your skull wasn't designed for modern life. It was designed for tribes. Small groups. Limited relationships. A manageable social environment. Today that's no longer true. Now your brain tracks friends. Family. Co-workers. Neighbors. Followers. Strangers online. People in comment sections. People you've never met. People you'll never meet. Your social world has exploded. But the system processing it hasn't changed much. The machinery is ancient. The environment is not. And that's the twist. The problem isn't that your brain rehearses conversations. The problem is that modern life gives it endless conversations to rehearse. For most of human history, the social simulation system had limits. Today those limits barely exist. Which may explain something many people experience. The feeling that your mind never fully switches off. The constant replaying. The endless analysis. The invisible audience that seems to follow you everywhere. Maybe these aren't separate problems. Maybe they're all connected. Maybe they're different expressions of the same ancient social machinery. A machine constantly asking one question. What will people think? And before you dismiss that as weakness, consider something. Humans became successful because we cared what other humans thought. Cooperation built civilizations. Reputation built trust. Social awareness built communities. The instinct isn't a bug. It's part of what made our species successful. But there may be an even deeper layer beneath all of this. Because what if these imaginary conversations aren't really about other people? Think about the conversations you replay most often. Notice something. They usually involve your values. Your identity. Your beliefs. The things that matter to you. You're not simply preparing responses. You're exploring yourself. Who am I? What do I believe? What would I actually say? What kind of person do I want to be? Suddenly the conversation changes. The other person becomes less important. And you become the real subject. The argument isn't always with them. Sometimes it's with yourself. The explanation isn't always for them. Sometimes it's for you. The conversation is a mirror. And that's why these imaginary interactions can feel so meaningful. They're not just social rehearsals. They're identity rehearsals. Moments where the mind experiments with different versions of who you are. At the beginning, we asked a simple question. Why do we rehearse conversations that never happen? But maybe that's not the real mystery. The real mystery is why humans spend so much time imagining themselves. Unlike most animals, we don't simply experience reality. We simulate it. We predict it. We rehearse it. We rewrite it. And hidden inside those imaginary conversations may be something far deeper than preparation. A quiet attempt to understand who we are before the moment arrives. Maybe the strange reason you rehearse conversations isn't because you're preparing for life. Maybe it's because you're constructing yourself one conversation at a time.